Continued trials of faith and patience. With the enlargement of the work, by which some 330 persons needed to be provided for, the trials of faith continued. Mr. Müller writes, "If we formerly had no certain income, so now we have none. We have to look to God for everything in connection with the work, of which often, however, the pecuniary necessities are the smallest matter. But to Him we are enabled to look, and therefore it is that we are not disappointed." October 7th, 1852. This evening there was only £8 left in hand for the current expenses for the orphans. Hitherto we had generally abounded, but though much had come in since the commencement of this new period, yet our expenses had been greater than our income, as every donation almost, of which the disposal was left with me, had been put to the building fund. Thus the balance in hand on May the 26th, 1852, notwithstanding the large income since then, was reduced to about £8. I therefore gave myself particularly to prayer for means, that this small sum might be increased. October the 9th. This morning Luke 7 came in the course of my reading before breakfast. While reading the account about the centurion and the raising from death the widow's son at Nain, I lifted up my heart to the Lord Jesus thus: Lord Jesus, Thou hast the same power now. Thou canst provide me with means for Thy work in my hands. Be pleased to do so. About half an hour afterwards I received £230 and 15 shillings. The joy which such answers to prayer afford cannot be described. I was determined to wait upon God only, and not to work an unscriptural deliverance for myself. I have thousands of pounds for the building fund, but I would not take of this sum, because it was once set apart for that object. There is also a legacy of £100 for the orphans 2 months overdue, in the prospect of the payment of which the heart might be naturally inclined to use some money of the building fund, to be replaced by the legacy money when it comes in. But I would not thus step out of God's way of obtaining help. At the very time when this donation arrived, I had packed up £100 which I happened to have in hand, received for the building fund, in order to take it to the bank, as I was determined not to touch it, but to wait upon God. My soul does magnify the Lord for His goodness. June the 13th, 1853. We were now very poor, not indeed in debt, nor was even all the money gone, for there was still about £12 in hand. But then there was needed to be bought flour, of which we generally buy 10 sacks at a time, 300 stones of oatmeal, 400 weight of soap, and there were many little repairs going on in the house, with a number of workmen, besides the regular current expenses of about £70 per week. Over and above all this, on Saturday, the day before yesterday, I found that the heating apparatus needed to be repaired, which would cost in all probability £25. It was therefore desirable, humanly speaking, to have £100 for these heavy extra expenses, besides means for the current expenses. But I had no human prospect whatever of getting even 100 pence, much less £100. In addition to this, today was Monday, when generally the income is little. But in walking to the orphan house this morning, and praying as I went, I particularly told the Lord in prayer that on this day, though Monday, He could send me much. And thus it was. I received this morning £301 for the Lord's service, as might be most needed. The joy which I had cannot be described. I walked up and down in my room for a long time, tears of joy and gratitude to the Lord raining plentifully over my cheeks, praising and magnifying the Lord for His goodness, and surrendering myself afresh with all my heart to Him for His blessed service. I scarcely ever felt more the kindness of the Lord in helping me. November the 9th. Our need of means is now great, very great. The Lord tries our faith and patience. This afternoon a brother and sister in the Lord from Gloucestershire called to see me at the New Orphan House, before going through the house. After a few minutes I received from the sister a sovereign, which she had been requested to bring to me for the building fund, and she gave me from herself £1 for my own personal expenses, and £1 for the building fund, and her husband gave me £5 for the orphans, and £5 for foreign missions. Thus the Lord has refreshed my spirit greatly, but I look for more, and need much more. November the 12th. This evening, while praying for means, came a little parcel containing 10 sovereigns from a Christian lady, living not far from the New Orphan House. This was a very great refreshment to my spirit. October the 17th, 1854. This morning at family prayer came in the course of reading Exodus 5, which shows that just before the deliverance of the Israelites out of Egypt, their trials were greater than ever. They had not only to make the same number of bricks as before, but also to gather stubble, as no straw was given them any longer. This led me, in expounding the portion, to observe that even now the children of God are often in greater trial than ever, just before help and deliverance comes. Immediately after family prayer, it was found that, by the morning's post, not 1 penny had come in for the work of the Lord in which I am engaged, though we needed much, and though but very little had come in during the 3 previous days. Thus I had now to remember Exodus 5, and to practice the truths contained therein. In the course of the day nothing was received. In the evening I had, as usual, a season for prayer with my dear wife, respecting the various objects of the Scriptural Knowledge Institution, and then we left the New Orphan House for our home. When we arrived at our house, about 9 o'clock, we found that £5 and also 5 shillings had been sent from Norwich in 2 post office orders for the building fund, and that £8 3 shillings and 11 had been sent in for Bibles, tracts and reports, which had been sold. This called for thanksgiving, but a little later, between 9 and 10 o'clock, a Christian gentleman called and gave me £1 for the orphans and £200 for foreign missions. He had received these sums from an aged Christian woman, whose savings as a servant during her whole life made up the £200, and who, having recently had left to her a little annual income of about £30, felt herself constrained by the love of Christ to send the savings of her whole life for foreign missions. Our especial prayer had been again and again that the Lord would be pleased to send in means for missionary brethren, as I had reason to believe they were in much need of help. And only at 8 o'clock this evening I had particularly besought the Lord to send help for this object. By the last mail I had sent off £40 to British Guiana, to help 7 brethren there in some measure. This amount took the last pound in hand for this object. How gladly would I have sent assistance to other brethren also, but I had no more. Now I am in some degree supplied for this object. July the 12th, 1854. Our means were now again reduced to about £30, as only about £150 had come in since June the 15th. In addition to this, we had very heavy expenses before us. This morning, in reading through the book of Proverbs, when I came to chapter 22, verse 19, that thy trust may be in the Lord, etc., I said in prayer to him, Lord, I do trust in thee, but wilt thou now be pleased to help me, for I am in need of means for the current expenses of all the various objects of the institution. By the first delivery of letters, I received an order on a London bank for £100, to be used for all the various objects, as the present need might require.